In this video, I want to show you how I painted a portrait of a girl using spots as part of the Portrait in 30 Minutes series. Let me remind you, this is a series where any of my subscribers can participate. Send your photos to my Telegram group and I choose the most interesting ones for me with a certain emotion that resonates with me at the moment and I paint it. So, what's the beauty of painting portraits in spots? It's actually that, as you can see for example, I initially made the portrait smaller in size, the head smaller in size. Then I realized that it's smaller than I would like, and I just took a cloth and moved it to the right to make the face bigger. Next, again, you may notice that I don't always find the color I need right away. That is, I stick to the approach that I don't spend too long mixing paint on the palette. I immediately try it on the canvas because on the palette it might be one color, but on the canvas, in relation to the surrounding colors, it can look completely different, both in tone and in color. I try it, but I don't always get the color exactly where I want. So if I miss the color, if I completely miss and it's a totally different color, I can wipe it off with a cloth. If I'm more or less close and it's easy to fix by adding an extra color, I just add the color that's needed. Well, let's say I wanted to make a peach color, a kind of medium skin tone. I put down a lighter, cooler color, so I just add a warmer, darker color. That is something more orange, red, etc. And then when I mix them, I get the color I need. Sometimes I don't get the right color on the second try, so I keep mixing and add the color that I'm missing. I'm telling you this so that you understand that during the process, you don't have to be able to get the right shapes and colors right away. That's the beauty of working with spots. First, you lay down a foundation, a base layer or underpainting. In other words, to put it differently, and when you have a certain foundation, which I usually try to establish, a kind of mid-tone, then you start to see your brain itself begins to fill in the details in your mind, especially if you've already created darker eye sockets, painted the lips one color, added a shadow under the nose, and defined the face's shape. Then your brain will automatically suggest what and where you need to add. And accordingly, if you add something and it turns out to be in the wrong place, you can always calmly move it around. After all, I've been writing this way for more than 10 years now and more, so I'm convinced this remains the simplest, most intuitive way to paint a portrait. When you have an accurate drawing, or even if it's not accurate but just a preliminary sketch you've made, your brain starts to latch onto it, to consider it the truth, and accordingly. Then, if there was a mistake from the beginning, it stays there, and we start to believe that's how it should be. When we paint using spots, we don't have this problem because we just have spots, no accuracy. And thanks to this, each time we critically look at what we have on the canvas, and each time we try to clarify, add, or correct something. Moreover, when we have these spots laid out at the beginning, there's no fear to keep working, refining, and clarifying further. There are no expectations that it should immediately turn out beautiful or anything like that. Well, I hope you've seen and realized all of this from many of my videos. Let me remind you, I painted this portrait in just 30 minutes in a single session. It has its drawbacks in that your eye gets tired by the end of the work and you might miss some things in the proportions or maybe the color and so on. That's why, once it's dry, I usually take a fresh look at the work and clarify or add some details. While working, be sure to take breaks and step away from the painting so your eyes can rest and forget it for a while, allowing you to look at it with a fresh perspective again. That way, your work will be much more effective and you'll reach the result you want much faster. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you want, send me your photos in my Telegram group to participate in the Portrait in 30 Minutes section. Also, I have an online course that currently has more than 50 videos where I explain in detail how and what I do with this course. Also, possibly my mentorship. So, right now in the video you can see the final stages, where the main task is to add brighter, more beautiful colors. Basically to increase the color contrast, also to refine the shapes, and just to increase the contrast between the lightest and darkest areas, in order to add even more depth to the portrait. At this stage, some edges are blurred to convey a softer form, while in other places, on the contrary, the contrasts are increased to separate these forms. And of course, various highlights and pure colors are added. So what do you think of the result, and what are your thoughts on the portrait done through spots?